Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Our project today is going to be an interesting one. It's probably going to take a little longer than most of the services as well. I have an Okuma Coronado CDX65 that has a fractured reel arm or seat, and well, sometimes you call it the handle if you like. That needs to be replaced, and this one belongs to Levon, and he gave me the replacement one. He had ordered it, and I guess he may have looked at it one time and said that's beyond my pay grade. I don't know, but at any rate it wound up here, and we're going to take this reel apart. We'll do a complete transformation over to the other reel. We'll show you how to service this reel while we're at it, and not very much different than what I normally do anyway. I normally do a complete take apart and service of a reel, so we'll show you how that's done. Well, we want to do a couple of things to start. We want to get as many of these pieces and parts off. We want to look at what it is that we're going to be doing. So I always recommend, if you don't know the reel or if you're going to be involved in a process like this, go out to the internet and get the schematic for the reel. That's this one. And it'll give you a burst diagram of all the pieces and parts. That's going to be very helpful to you if you get stuck. And we're going to be moving a lot of pieces and parts in this reel. So, well, this is going to be helpful to me, and I always like a backup plan, including taking pictures, but in this case, we're going to use that schematic as well. Looks like we have a whole bunch of side plate screws here. I'm thinking this side plate will come off without removing the rotor at this point, because I'm looking at the shaft, and it doesn't look like that's just a removable piece. It may be, and if it is, then well, I guess we can pull up now and see, but I'm not seeing it come up easily, so we'll see if we can't get the side plate off without that. To do that, we're going to remove the at least 4 side plate screws, and while I do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you like the art of reel repair, if you like to see how reels are made, how they're serviced, what differentiates them from other reels, and well, just want to learn a little bit more about fishing reels, or maybe you have a fishing reel that you need to service and you're just wondering what the process is to go about doing that. I do try to use a step-by-step process, and I do try to show as much of the service as I can to guide you as you service your own reels. Well, one of the things I like to do is to take the screws out of the side plate and line them up and make sure that they're all the same. Well, they're not. This one is different. The one that came out of the trip lever for this bait feeder is a different screw, so that's always something that you want to know. Well, I'm not sure if this case piece will come out now. We can look at the schematic, and well, I'm not seeing it one way or another, so let's take this handle off now. I don't like Okuma reels. This is a plastic part, and sometimes as you go to separate it, to remove it from that post that it's sitting on, if it's brittle, it snaps. So well, what do they say? Wish me luck, right? We need to get this over the post, and then once you get it over the post, it should have enough flexibility on the other side to be removed. Always an anxious moment, if you will. I've had more than one of these snap. Well, it came off and it didn't snap. I think the snap we heard probably was the snap back from this piece. And then this little collar is going to belong inside that, which kind of tells me right away, remind you, take pictures as you do the work on your fishing reels. The pictures are invaluable, and well, some things as simple as what side of the reel was the handle on, to more interesting kind of observations that you need. Okay, we got to get up under this. This appears to be one of these through washers, but I'm not seeing it easily in terms of how this collar is going to come off. There is a pin under there, looking at the schematic, and there's a 720, and 720 says, oh, I can't find it on the key number. That's good. But there appears to be another pin perhaps holding this on. Well, whenever I get in trouble like this, the alternate is to kind of work it by moving this up out of the way. We'll find out what the answer is later. Removing the set screw. And what you're doing here is a partial removal till you can remove the piece from underneath. Okay, so the screw is out. It looks like maybe a 14 millimeter. Let's give that a try. And then this one, the nut underneath here, you can see what I'm doing. The nut underneath here is a reverse threaded nut, which means that it comes off in a clockwise manner. Now we can move this up. Yeah, there's another screw that's hiding here for that side plate. So just note what you're doing, and our side plate should come off now. What happened on this schematic, I stopped short. I probably should have printed the second page. I did not. All right, I'm just going to check the back end. Yep, there's one more screw here. If you're finding that nothing is cooperating easily, then you certainly want to just recheck your work. These things should not be on there and should not be forced. All right, now I think I probably would have known that if I had simply looked at the new case that was provided, that we have a screw up there. All right, this is the side that shouldn't have a lot attached to it. So I'm going to see if we can't remove that piece. Not understanding why this piece doesn't come down. I guess it's just kind of salted in. That's what it appears to be. Yeah, okay. With that off, now we should be able to pull this side plate off. And this is a good place to take the pictures, right here. Because before you go too far, you want to see things and observe things as they are. For example, we have a spring here that's loading to a release mechanism over here. We have a click lever spring here that's going to the drag piece. Here's a setup for your drag. And all of these would be shown on your schematic, but it doesn't hurt to just take the pictures, do it from various angles. I'm going to rotate this just in case I need another view somewhere. But again, note some of the differences here as we align it. Note how that bar slides under the other bar here for the trip mechanism and so on. All right, so what we can do now is we can put that rotor back on. Sometimes easier said than done. Rotate this so that the trip mechanism, not the trip mechanism, the collar for your axle shaft is exposed. And go ahead and pull that collar up and out. Just keep working it. Eventually you will round that corner, and then you can bring this up. And then you can lift this out. And I apologize if my hand is in the way here. Maybe I can try with a pliers so that you can see what I'm doing. You want to pull that up and out. You'll notice it has two U-clips on it. Kind of U-shaped device. And all the pieces and parts I take off, they go in my parts tray. And I separate those in different corners so that I know the mechanisms that I'm working on. I'm going to pull up and out on the axle shaft now. And it would seem that this pin Yeah, I think I got it here. There you go. All right. So to remove this collar, to do it the other way, now that I have it out, I can see there's a C-clip here holding that on. So I'm going to remove that C-clip pretty carefully if I can. I don't want to lose that piece. This is the C-clip that's holding that little mounting piece on. That'll go into my parts tray, and all of a sudden everything comes out, right? We have that come out, and we have the pin that holds it on the axle shaft. So all of those will go into a corner of my tray. So that's, well, it's a long way around it. I showed you the workaround, but now you know when you go to open up the reel and for your service of the reel, if you remove that C-clip up top, then you don't have to do the workaround that I just did. Okay, the axle shaft is nice and clean. That'll go into the parts tray as well. And if you wanted to, for kind of peace of mind or whatever, you could put all of this back together in the tray, right? You put your little see-through your stud through, your collar, like that. And then you could also put the C-clip back on. I'm going to leave that. For some reason I got some fine hairs in here. I'm not sure what that's all about. All right, picture time again, right? I can't encourage you enough to take pictures as you move along. So now we have the axle shaft out of the way. I'm going to remove the crosswind block next. That just simply pulls up. And what I like to do is I like to clean the pieces and parts as I take them off. The next thing that should come out pretty easily is the main gear. I want to check this side, make sure that I don't have a screw holding that in. And with the axle shaft out, we should be able to remove the main gear now. Simply pull up and out on that. We can clean this up. And the more pictures you take, the better your confidence level will be that, well, if something goes bump in the night, you can restore it and not panic. All right, the reel is in good condition. As I mentioned, the issue here is not the reel performance. The issue here is the problem we are having with the broken handle. All right, that's clean. Put that in my parts tray. So you can go a couple of different ways now. You can start to remove the trip mechanisms, or you can remove the rest of the gearing. I'm going to choose to go with the trip mechanism. There's a spring that's screwed on here, and it goes into the trip lever here. One of the things that's been making me nervous since I started is this spring down here in that little cavity. So I'm going to try and get that out without blowing it out somewhere. There we go. I took the tension off of it. This is the spring I was referring to. And that goes in that left cavity behind that trip lever bar. Move some of these pieces out of the way. And I'm going to see what happens when we take this spring off now. I'm interested in seeing how that is attached so that I get it right the next time. And it looks like we're just got a 90-degree angle into the little cavity here, right there. And then it goes to the back of the trip mechanism here. Looking at the rest of this, I think all of this should come out now. I'm going to hold the assembly and pull out the spring because it's still under tension, like that. And then I believe this whole assembly should come out now. There you go. That whole assembly is out. We're going to leave that intact. The other piece that's part of that assembly is this rod. And I'm not sure that rod comes out without removing the lower part of this case. figure that out now. Yeah, we got to remove the part down here before we can do that. All right. Before I go to this is the last and first part I want to put back in. So I'm just going to take the other 3 pieces now. I'm going to take a picture first, right? And again, I'm using my video as the picture. I'm going to remove the little tie-down clamp. The screw for it. And then this clip should come off. Then I have the main the oscillation gear. And we can remove the oscillation gear and the secondary gear for the oscillation and the bearing. I'm just going to use a screwdriver to push the bearing through the case. Now, so much of this depends on memory, and the more pieces you can get off the desk, the better you're going to be for it. So we'll oil the bearing. We're going to put that right back in the socket. We're going to make sure that this gear is clean. It is. A little light lubrication. Install that on the post. Same thing here. No dirt on this one. No grease on it either. We'll just grease up the crosswind block. Make sure you get it on the back where it's going to run across the case, the face where the crosswind block is going to ride with it, and the gear teeth themselves. All right, let's put that screw back in. Turn it to make sure that it turns. We'll get the case clip. Now that's going to seat in that gear itself. So you got 2 things that are going on here. It goes in the case, inside the gear, and then it needs to sit over this plastic stud, and then the top screw goes in to hold that down. So that's the transfer of the gearing. Now let's go down to the bottom of the case. We still got work to do up top, but let's go grab that part that is the click mechanism and the dog set for this. To do that, I'll look at my schematic quickly. I have a retention ring here. Should be able to get that with the micro driver. And once you do that, this whole case should come down now. That's your whole assembly. Right back into the new one. But before we can do that, now you can take out that little bar, set the bar in, and now we can bring this case back. On this pressure piece, you're going to notice the 2 tags, and on this side with the screw mechanism, there's going to be 2 flat sides. That's how this is going to load. If you don't get those flat sides seated properly, this will not operate. A balancing act here. And now we can take that ring, that's the retention ring, and put that in. And that just simply gets pressed back in there, like that. Now we have the little click mechanism that goes. Not sure I can get it with the tip of this screwdriver. This is a weak point on these Okuma wheels. This click mechanism tends to break all the time. We saw how that goes. The driver, and put that back in for an install. And that's the lower end of the case. That's the lower end of the case as soon as I get the screw in. Alright, that's the lower end of the case with the exception of my friend over here, that spring. I want to go and do the trip mechanism assembly before I do that other piece. Trip mechanism goes in. The screw, or spring rather, is going to work its way over. This whole thing can get seated by pushing down. And then we need to just kind of pull that spring in, which is not an easy task. I like to use a pliers, which is what I use to remove it. To grab it firmly and, oh, we pulled it out. All right. On the old, there's 2 ways, right? So this one's going to run up and under. Let's seat it in the case first. Go the opposite way. Pivot the leg for the screw so that it lines up with the hole, and then you have to turn this. So that's going to compress the spring, but it's going to allow you to seat it as well. I think we should be good. Okay, and that sets it. So now we have a functioning spring, and now we need that one little screw that I have left on my table here to lock that down. And most of the time I'm going to tell you to take those screws and put them in a parts tray. There are so many of these screws that look the same, and I knew the order I was going on with these. So I just decided to leave that out. But this is your tie down screw that will hold the spring in place. And we got 2 more springs here. We got the long one for that bar, and let's see if we can't get that in. One of the problems with these cases is they don't give you a lot of room to work, and then to try and do some things like this compression here, that's going to be a challenge. I'm going to have to take my glove off for this. I'm going to grab a screwdriver and try to compress the spring that way. Actually, I was able to use my finger to do that. I want to make sure that it's set all the way. So that's the way the spring looked when we took it out. And that's the way it is right now. Okay. The only thing left on the bottom here then was a couple of pieces, right? It was our crosswind block. Get a little bit of grease on that. Now, if you didn't take a picture of this, this is an easy one to flip upside down, but I remember that we had that little tag here for the clip that's going to hold the axle shaft in place. So I'm going to put the crossline block in place. Cleaned up our main gear, so let's put grease on that. As I mentioned, it's going to be a long project. Those of you that are kind of staying with it, I appreciate your continued view. I get grease on the back, which is going to drive the oscillation gear. And we should be able to put that in right now. Okay, that essentially is the bottom, with the exception of the top end of this. I think probably for the top end, let's take that out for a moment. We have our anti-reverse clutch, our pinion gear assembly, and our override assembly. Before you go too far, note that there is a V-spring right here, and wow, that tends to take a walk from time to time if you're not aware of it. This is the cap, I believe, holding the whole thing on. Again, I have the schematic here for reference if needed. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to leave this right on the table because I don't intend to go too far with this. This is the one thing I was concerned about here. The spring on the post for the override tends to want to take off on you. So I'm going to hold the spring and walk it over that post to take the tension off of it. With that tension off of it, this whole assembly should be able to come up now. And of course we have the roller bearings in there. This is an older assembly with the roller bearings and collar, and well, we gotta go rebuild that now. Okay, one of the things you didn't see is me reloading all of this. It takes a lot of patience. Remember what I said, that one with the dot needs to be to the right. You have to move the trip mechanism over. This is the one that involves that spring clip here. There is a screw that attaches. And then the rod and the arm should separate. And then they go back into the case the way they came out. Line the hole up with that rod so that that little screw can go back in. And use a little micro driver to get that screw back in. It's a small screw. Then this little spring goes back in. And now we should be able to set this assembly. You want to aim for that over the stud here. And with any luck, we've got it right. We have our silver casing in here. The bearings are inside. The override mechanism is here. The only thing that we need to do then is bring the spring and set the spring on the post here. And again, I've had experiences where these things have shot, so let's see what we can do in terms of our best effort here to bring this over and down. Okay, we have it. Success. All right, wow, that was something, wasn't it? Okay, one more thing to grease before we put that main gear back on. That would be your pinion gear. We can take our top set now. And again, this bearing clears here. Just like that. There's two small washers that are going to go for the rotor. On top of that, our cap. When you grab your cap, make sure you align the holes. Now there's an extra stud here, so that's telling you that this stud and this small hole here align. That lines up the 3 screws that we took out. Kind of an odd balance to it. Well, if I'm not talking as much as I normally do on these reels, it's because this one requires a lot of concentration. You can see we've pretty much run the gamut here in terms of transferring this case over. I did mention at the beginning this was going to be a long one. There's no getting around that. You're essentially building a reel as they would build it in the plant, only they've done an awful lot of them. And they kind of got the swing of things. When you're trying to do it yourself and get disrupted with a little bearing there, well, that's going to take a little bit longer. All right, our main gear can go in now. Make sure you merge the main gear with all the pieces. With the main gear, we're kind of going in reverse, right? The next thing up then is our axle shaft. Now we're going to do this one the right way. You have your 2 slots there. That's going to accept the C-clip. Take that pin out before that falls out. Light coat of grease onto the axle shaft. Bring it through the pinion gear, through the crosswind block. Seat it into your rear drag. And align those 2 slots to accept that clip. And that's pretty tight tolerance on that clip. So take your clip and then insert that in. There you go. Tuck it in under that little ridge. And now we can close the case up. Get your side plate. Just work on it, get that seated. Roll it over to the other side. Now this one's got that little indentation, so just center that. We have the long screw that goes through for that. All right. Give it a test. pull it down. Should be free spooling. Click, lock in. That works. All right, coming down towards the end of it now. How do I know that? I only have a piece or two in the box. All right, I'm going to bring this axle shaft up a little bit. Makes it easier to install this crossbar here. Grab your piece, make sure that gets on. Our 2 spool height adjuster washers. Fittingly, it's this E-clip here. That's the last piece, and I say fittingly because these things will give you a fit. I'll try and grab it with the pliers here and get into that seam without losing it. Success. That clip is on there now, and that bar can't come up. All right. I would be remiss if I didn't service the spool, so let's do that, and then we'll give it all a final test. We'll see how we did. All indications are success. But you know, when you're working with things like that anti-reverse clutch bearing that just kind of exploded on us and the like, well, you're never quite sure. To my understanding, this is probably felt washers inside of here. Just kind of thinking that's what Okuma did, but we'll find out. I'm going to put a rubber band on this spool because that line always wants to run. Oh, we got yeah, fabric washers in here. Very good. All right. This is a 6 drag washer set. You start with a fabric washer, followed by a metal, by a fabric. This one's called the eared washer. It goes in the center. The last of the keyed washers go up top. So these have the option to be greased or not. These have got a lot of grease on them, so I'm not going to do anything with them other than check them and reinstall them. Everything is clean inside. But again, when you're doing a service of the reel, don't forget the drag washers more times than you can imagine. There's a lot of old dirt and debris in these because it's a top washer system, and the top washer system takes on a lot of water. As the line spins around it, the water goes in. So I'm going to grab a towel and wipe down the rim of this and install that on here. Bring our button on. I think the handle was in the box, so we're going to go back to that box for a moment, grab the handle. This is a good time to say thank you to our first responders, essential personnel, the fire, police, rescue, and the like. Truly appreciate all of your work, and thanks for keeping us safe. All right, we're just gonna. So let's see if it works according to schedule. The handle is on. The reel's turning nicely. Good oscillation on our spool. It's going to bait feeder mode. Releases our spool. Turn our handle. Resets the bait feeder. Locks in the axle shaft. This one's ready to go fishing again, Levon. So thanks for sending it in. It's been quite a project. I hope everybody's learned how to replace or to service one of these by taking every piece and part out of it and examining it and making sure that it goes well again. And I guess the only thing that's missing here, it looks like this plate here, a little trim ring, probably goes on there. So I'm not going to continue the video for that. I'll see if I can push this out, and if I can push it out, I'll install it on the other one, and we'll get that ready for return. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. I wish you all well, and thank you for watching, and have a great day.